The first location in which code can be inserted is into what are termed Microsoft Excel objects. And you'll see in every project this folder is always there. And inside the folder you'll see icons which represent both the workbook and all the sheets in the workbook. So at this point in time I have a workbook that contains a single sheet. If I had 10 sheets, I would have 10 icons, one icon representing each sheet. And to place code which controls that sheet, or which controls the workbook as a whole, I simply double click on the appropriate icon. So if I double click on sheet 1, a code window appears, and if I double click on this workbook, another code window appears. Under the window menu, the various code windows are displayed, and I can choose a code window to bring it to the front. If you've come across the shortcut Control-Tab to switch between all of the different windows that you have open in Excel, this also works with code windows. It allows you to switch between all the different code windows. Let's just close these two windows down for the moment. Control-W is the shortcut if you like to use that method. Code that's placed inside Excel objects is what's called event code. That is to say that the code executes automatically when a certain event takes place within that object. So in the case of sheet 1, let me just double click to bring up the sheet 1 code window. To write code based on an event, I go to what's called the Object drop-down menu, and here I choose the object in question, which in this case is the worksheet. This then causes Excel to automatically create a sub-procedure. A sub-procedure is simply a chunk of code. Anything that I type between the opening and closing lines of the sub-procedure will be executed when the default event takes place. And the default event for worksheets is whenever a new selection is made. So if you switch from cell A1 to cell B1, that will trigger whatever code is written within this sub-procedure. That's the default event, and then on the right hand side in the procedure drop-down we have access to other events against which we can code. So we can write code which will be triggered automatically whenever any of these events take place within a worksheet. For the moment I'm just going to stay with the default sub-procedure, and I'm going to write a very simple line of code using the function messageBox. So here I'm just going to type msgbox, that's the name of the function, space, and then I'll type a message. Since the message is text, it needs to go in double quotes. So here's my message. So anytime within sheet 1 that the selection changes, up will pop my message box. I can now switch back to Excel, and if I click on a new cell, up comes my annoying message. If I use the arrows on my keyboard, again, because the selection is still changing, up comes my message. Let's press Alt F11 to go back to the code window, and let's delete this annoying piece of code. The same applies to the workbook itself. Let's close the sheet window and double click on this workbook to open up the workbook code window. So we follow the same procedure. From the first drop down, the object drop down, we choose the object, which in this case is the workbook, and Excel creates the default sub-procedure. This time the default event is the opening of the workbook. Let's say that we're interested in writing some code which will execute whenever someone attempts to print the workbook. So what we do this time is we go up to the procedure drop down on the right, and we find the print event procedure. You'll notice that it has a special name. It's before print rather than simply print. Whenever the word before occurs with a subprocedure, this indicates that the event itself can be cancelled. So here's our new subprocedure. We no longer need the open one, so I'm just going to highlight it and delete it. So any code that I enter here will be triggered whenever the user attempts to print the workbook. You'll notice I use the term attempts to, because whenever a subprocedure has the word before, then this implies that you can actually block the event. You can stop them from doing that particular action. So in this case, we can stop them from printing the workbook. Let's say that our company has a policy of only printing a document when it's absolutely necessary, and then in the case of this document, it's not considered absolutely necessary that it's printed. So we want to do two things. We want to display a message to say this document is not meant to be printed, save it as a PDF instead, and we then want to block the print command. So first of all, the message, we've seen message box, MSG box, and then in quotes I'll simply put a quick message, and then to block the print command I use this special parameter which is called cancel, and I simply set cancel to true, and that will stop the print event from actually happening. So cancel equals true, and that should do the trick. So let's test it. I'm going to go back to Excel, Alt F11 if you want to use the keyboard, and I suppose we should put something in our worksheet. At the moment it's completely blank. So now it's got something in it, and we go to File and Print. When I click on the print button, up comes my message, and the print event is blocked. Let's go back to Visual Basic, and again let's delete our example code.